Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us again today. Our learning session today took us to Rwanda. We sat with a tech entrepreneur and there was so much that he was dishing. And as usual, there are a few points that I don't want you to miss as we go along. Obviously, there will be those that you pick on your own, but these ones, please note. The first one is how and why you could set up a tech company in Africa and serve customers who are elsewhere in the world. Africa is virgin land for a lot of things, and as this guest was saying today, there's a lot of young talent in Africa that's really untapped. It's not used to its potential, and it's one of the many reasons that you'd want to select to do business from Africa, especially for a tech company. And the rest of the world is technologically advanced. They're the ones who demand most of these tech-based services. So you can't worry about not having a market in Africa when the rest of the world is just available for you to reach through technology or virtually. So look out for that. And the second one is building an appropriate company culture for a tech startup to thrive. It's not every other working environment that encourages innovation. I mean, innovation today is critical for every business, almost. But it's even more important for a tech startup or a tech company. So today we'll be learning about what it takes to create an environment that encourages that learning, that experimentation. The third one is sourcing investors for a tech startup and what investors generally look for. I know that it can be a daunting task, especially when you're young and you're talented. You can create an app or a software, but how do you go about sourcing investors for your business? So please look out for tips on that today. And the fourth one is the value of working for someone else before you start your own business. I absolutely love this one, and I was truly surprised to have it come from a tech entrepreneur, because that's not what they tell us, especially in the media, and also highlighting the value of bringing some of those failed entrepreneurial ventures or some of those lessons from your failed entrepreneurial ventures and seeing how you could use all of that to better run your current business. And the last one is putting aside your ego to get ahead in entrepreneurship. We could have an entire session on that one, because entrepreneurship is really about emotional maturity, managing perceptions, and just staying the course regardless, but opening yourself more than anything to learn, to ask questions, to be vulnerable, to fail, to look stupid. All of these are issues that surround how well can you manage your ego. So let's get into it and see what we learn.
Build yourself. Immerse yourself in practical knowledge. Learn from the doers. And get doing with Sarala Entrepreneurship College.
We'll be learning from Arun Shanmuganathan, who is a co-founder of Hens Technologies that's based in Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda. Hens Technologies was founded in 2020. It's just a baby. And to date, they've raised about $2.7 million in capital. And before we share a bit more about what they do at Hens Technologies, perhaps let me share a few fascinating insights about Africa's digital economy. And by digital economy, I'm referring to a worldwide network of commercial transactions and professional interactions, which are ICT enabled. Africa's digital economy is large and growing, with an estimated market size of $115 billion in 2020, and is expected to reach $712 billion by 2050. You may have heard of tech startup success stories like Flutterwave, CheaperCash, and OPay, which offer payment systems that facilitate commerce in Africa. Today we're learning from a budding tech startup that's just joined Africa's technology scene. So what do they do at Hens Technologies? Hens Technologies has an artificial intelligence powered legal operations software that is designed to help corporate legal teams source the right external law firms and lawyers to work with. It's basically about using data to find the people you need for the problems you have. And they've decided to start with legal services sourcing software. They've hired some of the best talent from across the continent. Talk about talent without borders. Their target markets are the US and Europe, where corporates spend hundreds of millions of dollars in legal expenses annually. Finding a lawyer with the right expertise at the right price is time-consuming and can be inaccurate. The Hens software, therefore, helps clients find the best lawyers for every job. And by every job, maybe we need to break that down a little bit. Big corporates are often faced with an array of legal issues to address, and it's like the bigger the company, the more expensive and expansive the issues can be. They range from intellectual property issues, labor issues, shareholder disagreements, contracts of all kinds, and different lawyers have different expertise in these areas, and finding the right one at the right price can be impossible or daunting, especially in developed countries where there are hundreds of thousands of these type of service providers. So let's hear more from Arun and how they go about navigating this. Arun, let me allow you to introduce yourself so you can give us your name, a little bit of your background, not too much of it, and we can just dive straight into Hence Technologies. You are?
Perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Arun Shanmuganathan. My background, I've been in a lot of different places in the world. So I was born in India, I grew up in New Zealand, I studied in the UK, but home is now very much here in Kigali. Right. And I've come from a background mostly of mathematics. That's what I studied. I love doing mathematics here. I kind of have transitioned from there into doing more, machine learning, data science, product development. I did a little bit of teaching as well at the African Leadership University. I really enjoy working with young people, young talent, kind of helping people grow into the best versions of themselves, especially in the world of technology and entrepreneurship and building great products for people that they love to use. So that's a little bit about me.
About you, thank you very much. I'm glad that you also have a teaching background, because then you can teach my class today very well.
I'm looking forward to it.
If you don't mind me asking on record, how old are you?
I'm 27.
Oh my God. Makes me very old. Well, I'm very happy that you've allowed us to come in and talk to you about what you do. Hence Technologies, what do you do at Hence Technologies?
Yeah, sure. So at Hence, what we're doing is we kind of envision a world that is more like the future of the world is really about the knowledge economy. Mm-hmm. So this is how people use their knowledge to engage in the world around them, because there is a lot of work that people still do in agriculture and industry and things, but we really think the future is in the knowledge economy and how you use that knowledge. And right now, the way that knowledge economy works is it's quite unfair. It's not really working to meet everyone's needs, because it's really about who what badges they have, like which universities they've been to or which companies they're associated with, not really whether you know that you have the right knowledge to solve the problem at hand. And so what we're doing is we're trying to create a more fair, efficient, and transformative knowledge economy for the world right now. So for people everywhere, really. And how we're doing that right now is we're focusing in on using data to make it easier to find the people that you need for the problem that you have. So looking at what kind of work people have done in the past, looking at what kind of recommendations people have given about you, looking at what kind of prices you charge compared to other people, all sorts of relevant data about the quality and quantity of work that you've done, and using that to help organizations, companies make better decisions. And we've started off in the world of legal with lawyers, because we think that's a huge problem. Most companies, most people really don't know which lawyers to use. It's a very untransparent market. And so our software right now works for companies, helping them make better decisions about which lawyers they should be using for their particular needs. Now, we hope that we'll be doing a lot more than lawyers in the future, developers, consultants, accountants, kind of everyone where you're using, in every situation where you're using your knowledge. But we've really honed in on one specific use case, one need, and we're trying to solve that problem first before we kind of look more broadly.
Right. Okay. So I understand you have articulated the problem well. Now, in terms of lawyers, do you take lawyers from everywhere in the world, or you're working in a particular jurisdiction? Is it Rwanda or anywhere in the world?
Yeah. So right now we're focused where our customers are, and our customers right now, the main ones we're targeting are in the US and in Europe, and that's because people spend a lot of money on lawyers in those in those kind of jurisdictions. We're open and we're considering like the potential of doing something on the continent, in Rwanda, something like that. But our primary target base right now is really in the US and Europe, because so much money is spent on lawyers. There's such a big problem there. And we really think this problem is global, and if we can solve it somewhere where it's big and meaty and there is it's a huge opportunity, then we can also start to solve it in other places where it's going to become more of a problem as we kind of increase in complexity in the world around us.
Right. So I take it that the US and in Europe, like you're saying, these are very discerning markets. What do they want? What do your clients specifically want? What are the things that they're very big on?
Yeah, so if you look at the customers, what we find when we talk to them, and we spent lots of time talking to these executives, we did a lot of interviews, we talked to them, I tried to understand their challenge. And the big feeling is that, one, they have a lot of external counsel, and they often don't understand who's good and who's bad within their existing roster. So they might have, let's say, 100 law firms, 1,000 lawyers, and they're constantly assigning them for a whole bunch of different cases. And the knowledge, as of right now, remains in the heads of the people that work for them. So they'll say, I know who's good. But the problem is, as soon as that person leaves, that knowledge is gone.
Right.
And so you need to capture that in a system. You need to be able to continually evaluate and figure out who's good and who's not, because maybe that great person, that great lawyer who you work with actually moves to a different firm, and you need to make sure you know that. Or maybe the person who in your team who knows who's good and who's bad for which type of cases could leave, and then you lose all of that asset. And similarly, when someone joins your team, you want to capture that knowledge very, very quickly of who they've interacted with in the past. And so it's really about having a better knowledge base of who's good and who's bad. The other challenge that people find is it's difficult to evaluate who's good and who's bad on an ongoing basis. So they'll try and implement annual surveys, quarterly surveys, that kind of thing, but really people hate doing surveys. I know people have tried to make me do surveys in the past, and I always am like, please don't make me do them. And so when we try
I'm guilty of
exactly, right? So what we try and do is we shift that towards a more constant, ongoing, it's what we call micro-feedback style of interaction, where people are giving kind of small little interactive pieces, like just after they've had a meeting with a lawyer, or just after they've had an interaction, where they can give a little thumbs up, thumbs down type rating that is really easy, really quick, but over time gives you a picture of how this person is performing. So they're struggling with evaluation, they're struggling with making selection decisions, and they're also struggling to infuse their values into those decisions. So we're moving to a world where it's increasingly important to think about, let's say, diversity in your selection process, or to think about environmentalism and climate change in your selection process. All of these things that are your values, and you care about, but you don't know if your lawyers care about them. You don't know if the people you work with, maybe they've worked with an oil company and helped them got out of some big case.
And before you know it, your company's associated with that.
Exactly. And so we're helping them manage those risks and help make sure that they know who exactly they're working with, what risks they're exposed to by doing that. And so they're really infusing their values into that selection decision as well.
It sounds to me that you don't just match, you're not just a matchmaking company. You are also doing a lot of knowledge management, because when you were talking about taking implicit knowledge and making explicit so that people can interact with the knowledge and the data, so it's knowledge and data management more than anything.
Exactly. Because there are a whole bunch of matchmaking services out there. There's platforms which have a lot of lawyers, and there's platforms which help you kind of do that matching. But we think it's much deeper than that, because one, you have a whole lot of existing information in your team, right? What in the heads of the team, but also in the emails and the contracts and the billing systems. You have all of that data. You have that information. You have the information in people's heads, and you have publicly available information about values, about what kind of expertises people have. And so if we can bring all of that together, you can have a really solid knowledge base that improves your decision making over time, and becomes much more personalized to you as an individual and your organization and the way that it interacts with the world.
Wow, I love how you've gone into depth, the understanding of your clients' needs and the complexities, especially with the rising value system. It's no longer just about we are a good firm, we have good lawyers. It has to go deeper than that in the values that you were listing out, because if you miss that bit and you're looking to work with this discerning market, then you could be in trouble. So now you have understood your clients, you sit with these executives, you know what they want. Now on the screening side for your lawyers, What goes on in there? How do you screen and say this one would be the best lawyer to work for our
Yeah,
clients?
so we're not actually interacting or engaging with the lawyers on a very specific basis. So what happens is the firms will tell us, here are the lawyers that we already work with, here is the data that we have, here's the firms we have. And then we go and collect and gather the information and then present it back to the user on the software. And then the software allows the user themselves to compare on a variety of factors. So they'll compare them on their ratings, compare them on the price that they've done, compare them on what kind of work they've done in the past, they'll compare them on these values that they care about. So we're not sitting there going, this is the right lawyer for you. We're saying, here's a platform that over time can show you the lawyers that you might need. And it's not just the lawyers you already use. We also show them information about other lawyers that they could work with. And we don't sit there having a badge or a star or something that says this is who we recommend. The software is recommending for you based on your personal needs. Like say you really care about making sure they're responsive, right? Making sure that they come back to you very quickly. Then the software can understand over time which kind of lawyers are responsive based on who's giving feedback about that, and then suggest to you the fact that this one might be a better fit for you. So, but it's not us as individuals personally evaluating them. It's really, we really believe in a data-driven technology solution to this that can scale, because then, in the long run, the vision would be, new lawyers come in from anywhere in the world with any sort of background. They don't need to have gone to the bigger schools, but if they really understand, they're really client-centric, then they can be on the platform and people can learn, oh, actually, maybe I'll try this one out. And then as a result, we create a fairer, more efficient economy where people can actually engage on a general level rather than just, oh, I see they went to this big law school, so therefore they're good. So that's where we're moving towards, rather than human biases, really being data-driven.
Data-driven, I love that. Now, do you have a lot of lawyers reaching out to you, wanting to be on the platform? Because this is a business opportunity for them.
As of right now, we've been kind of pushing away from that. We've had interest and people have talked to us about, being there, because a lot of the other sort of matchmaking platforms that you'll find out there, they'll be almost for the sellers, they'll be for the lawyers, because they will say, we will pay to be at the top of your matchmaking service. And that's what you find with a lot of these rankings and awards that people get. It's like you can pay for these awards, right? Yeah. And then you have that award, and then you can sell more, to get more business. Now we don't want to be there. We want to be for the buyers, because we think the world of knowledge economy should be and can be controlled by the buyers, people who are spending their money to actually get these services. But right now it's much more controlled by the sellers, people who are constantly advertising, marketing, selling those services. And we want to make it much easier to navigate this very untransparent world. It's like, if you think about like phones, for example, right? What happens is you can compare all of these phones on all of the different metrics you care about. How much RAM does it have? How quickly, what's the quality of the camera? What's all of this? And there's great tools to help you make that decision. There aren't the same tools. Like, when you come to a brand new country, or you enter, you want to start doing some employment work, right? Like, you just don't know. You have to go around and you ask, you call, you do all of this. So it's much harder to be a buyer in this space. And so as a result, we're trying to shift the balance and give people control.
I could almost call it God's work, honestly, because you're trying to make it very transparent, and you want it to be based on data, which then improves the integrity.
Exactly.
Even coming to Rwanda, Kigali, I was now selecting hotels, and I'm asking myself, are these the best hotels, or are these the ones that paid to appear first in my search?
Exactly.
So then it makes me search harder, because then I have to go for the ones who did not boost for their...
And we think it's really important to create that trust in consumers and us, that we're not being paid by the lawyers. We're not, we're here to show you the data objectively and give you the option to find what you're looking for in as easy as way as possible.
I'm absolutely impressed by the fact that you are based in Africa. Your clients are in the US and Europe. Do you find that you have to fight harder to gain that trust with your clients, or it really does not matter where you're based, as long as you're delivering the value that your clients are looking for?
Yeah, so it's really changing. One of the lucky things in a way was that when we started, we started right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, so March 2020. And at the time, everyone was very open to talking online, right? Like, so you didn't need to be there in person. You didn't need to kind of interact with them because no one expected that, right?
Right.
And so as a result, we were able to start building trust with customers and clients through this online remote world, which everyone's moving more and more towards, recognizing and realizing that talent is distributed everywhere, recognizing that you can work from anywhere, recognizing that it is useful to have personal interaction. So we do try and visit our customers, we do try and talk to them because we can get a better understanding of them. But they're really excited about the fact that we can get to build product and technology here. And why is that? Because one, we have access to the best talent here. You know, if we were based in Silicon Valley or London or somewhere, we'd be competing for talent with so many other great companies that are working there. But here, because it's so early, it's so nascent, we get to really find the best people who get to work on this problem, who are interested in building cutting edge technology. And so our customers aren't generally afraid of it. They're actually quite open to it, and they're up for it. The other great thing about us that's allowed us to make sure that we don't have any trust issues is that we're also built on top of a technology called Palantir Foundry. So Palantir is a big US, recently IPO'd US technology company that has a data operations and analytics software. It's very secure, very stable, that the US government, large companies around the world use. And so we're able to say we're built on top of Palantir Foundry. We get a lot of things there, but we get the innovation and excitement and talent of being based here in Rwanda, based here in Africa, and building on top of that. And people are really open to that. And so we haven't really had any issues around trust in that way. I think it's
I love that. I love that you're using technology that is known, is trusted, and so for quality assurance purposes also for you give your own self, the assurance that what you're giving your clients is the best one. And you also don't want technology that's going to crash when your clients are now depending on you. Speaking
exactly.
of that, I believe that talent is a major part of being able to offer the services that you offer. How do you source your talent?
Yeah, it's been a huge opportunity for us being based here in Rwanda. And it's part of what gives me a lot of excitement. I was here at the African Leadership University, got to really go deep into talent here. So we have a really strong network of universities, of coding schools, different places that are developing people and really growing into them. And I think one of the challenging pieces of this is that people here on the continent it's a very young continent, right? There's a whole bunch of young people coming up, graduating, getting into these things. And they don't come with experience. They don't come with 5 years of this and 10 years of this and whatever. What they come with is an enthusiasm to learn, a desire to work on interesting problems, a motivation to step up and do things. And that's what we've been able to do. We take on people very early, just straight out of university, into internships, into graduate roles, and then we throw them at difficult problems. We just let them get into it,
because
and
that's where the innovation will flow.
That's where it comes from, and then we find that people love stepping up. People love being pushed into it, right? Rather than being told do this, do that, we just say here is a challenge. Go figure out what is the right way to do it. And then by doing that, I think we grow leaders. We grow people who can then take responsibility, own parts of the business, own areas of the technology, and really run with it. And I think being here in the continent gives us that advantage, because in a way, if you're based in Silicon Valley or London, people can be complacent. They can, I want to get the next job with the higher paying salary. I want that brand.
A problem.
Exactly. Whereas here, I think people are just excited to work on interesting problems. And this is a global problem. It's a knowledge economy. Everyone feels part of it. I think being excited by the vision, being excited by the culture that we get to create, I think the talent's a huge piece of that. And I think that's one of our biggest assets, something that we go through. We talk to our customers. We say, we can bring the best, smartest minds here from the continent into solving this problem for you. And they're like, that sounds really helpful.
I love that. But do you find that as the leader of the movement, do you find that you have to train a little bit to get your new interns up to speed?
There's definitely mentorship involved. There's definitely, guidance and coaching. But I think it's there's a few things, as I said. One is being thrown into the difficult problems. And then I think it's being in an environment where everyone is open, asks each other questions, collaborative, really like questions things. And that's kind of the nice thing. The world of legal, no one in our team has any understanding of.
Right.
And that humbles you. You know, that humbles you in saying, I don't understand this world, so therefore let me really ask it. Let me really ask the questions I need to ask in order to understand that. And we all kind of have this attitude. So as a result, the team people come in and they find, you know, they're very easily able to go and ask others who've been on the team for a few years, others who've recently joined, anyone, just ask questions, kind of engage, learn, and build the technology together. And it's similar because we're built on this Palantir Foundry technology. It's very new. It's very new, and it's not open source, so you can't just go and do a course on it and learn about it. You have to come to it and figure out what it is, which for some people can be very tough. If you've had 5 or 10 years of experience working with a specific technology and you're told to work with a brand new one, you might go,
because it takes a lot of unlearning and relearning.
Exactly. But with young people who don't have that experience, actually it's great because they're like, I can just jump straight into it.
So you're not having to first shift some paradigms and then try to build a culture.
Exactly.
So that is the culture you've sort of built here, culture of learning, innovation, problem solving.
Exactly.
Is that the culture that your team just embraces?
They've really embraced it. They take it on, they add to it themselves. Just now this week we're doing what we call a hack week, where everyone is just hacking together different solutions to problems, but being super creative, not being constrained by necessarily the vision that we're building to, but saying, what if we could just do anything? And people are like excited about that and just seeing what they could come up with. And we're excited to see what people do, because maybe some of that will end up being core elements of the product that we build and we get to share. And if you don't create that space for people to innovate, to come in and bring their problems, then you will have that turnover, because people will get tired and bored and say, oh, well, maybe I want to do something else. But if you can create that environment of, I want to build, I want to create, I want to do things, and actually it's a great place to bring on young people and allow them to grow in this environment.
Yeah. You'll notice that the environment that Arun is describing is very open. It's a non-bureaucratic working environment. There are no rigid structures and excessive protocols, which often stifle innovation, especially in Africa, where we work with a lot of hierarchies and respecting the elders, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean. But what he's saying is they are free to ask questions. They work with reasonable levels of uncertainty, and they learn as they go. You know, so these are critical to create an environment where people can innovate, people can trial and experiment with different solutions and ideas. And in his words, if you don't create this type of environment, these young people, these young, innovative, talented people will leave. And this is food for thought if you want to start an innovative or even technology-based company in Africa, or elsewhere in the world really, but most importantly in Africa. Let's open up the environment. Let it flow. All right, Arun, I want to shift into money. I want us to talk about money.
Sure.
This is a
Interesting
business
topic,
after all.
of course.
So how were you funded to start this, and how are you managing your finances to make this dream come alive?
Yeah, so this is a business, you know, where we're looking to bring in revenue, and we have started to bring in some revenue. We have customers are paying us, and that's getting us there. But really, the big part of our financing as a startup is that we're venture backed. So in the sense that we are, you know, we have equity, and our angel investors have invested in us, and so we've raised to date about I think it's about $2.7 million. It's been it's been about two rounds of that to get there, and it's been through our existing network. So the co-founders, that there's 3 of us, you know, we've brought in our networks, and people have been excited about what we're trying to build, and have invested to have a piece of the equity in order to fund us. And then through that, we've been kind of using that, and you know, our biggest investment, what we've been spending on, has largely been on the talent, on the people. You know, as a technology company, you spend a little bit on, you know, some of the technology costs that you have, of course, but the huge thing is the people, and we want to keep investing in the people. We want to keep growing as the company continues to grow, as we hopefully raise new funding, as we hopefully get more revenue. We want to keep investing in people so that we can build out a better product, so that we can...
So when you say investing in people, is it remunerating them?
Yeah,
or is it
exactly.
Or just everything?
Salaries, bonuses, it means equity as well. Like, you know, everyone in our team who joins full-time gets equity as well, and that's a huge part
That's
of we're
good.
doing that so that they feel ownership in the company,
Yes,
and
right.
so that when we succeed, they're also able to succeed, and then hopefully become the entrepreneurs, the investors of the
Yes,
future, who are
right.
then creating and building as well. And so we
Right.
want to make sure that positive benefit stays on the continent as well. And so that's really what I mean by in terms of, well, yeah, and also just here, the office, the environment that we're creating, we've been, putting money into that so that we're getting there. And then obviously there are costs in terms of marketing and sales. So we do have to, spend on trying to acquire new customers. We do have to sometimes fly to the customers in order to interact with them. But this is all, as an early stage startup, almost everything you're doing is research, is development into building out a better product, into building a machine that can acquire new customers on an ongoing basis.
Right.
And we're really just testing things out. And that's what our investors want us to do. They don't want us necessarily to just get into what is the profit you're making? What is this? They're saying, keep investing, keep growing, keep trying to expand, getting market share.
They understand the nature of this business.
Understand the nature of the business, exactly.
What was crucial in getting those investors?
I think there's been a few things. I think one, we had a really solid team from day one, right? Like I think the founders, the backgrounds of us, I think the initial early team that we had and the backgrounds that we were able to get. I think very early on, like investors are looking for a solid team and looking for an interesting.
So they're investing more in the people behind this movement.
For sure, it's the people, and then also the problem space. So they want to know what problem space you're tackling, and they want to make sure it's a big enough problem space that there is money to be made in this problem space. And the world of lawyers and the world of knowledge providers is a huge world, right? Like it's a trillion dollar world, right? And so they want to know that you're tackling something big and has that huge market, and that you can go there.
And potential for growth.
Potential for growth, exactly. It's a growing market. It's really something there. So that's the first step. And then the second stage, the second round of funding we did, there's a lot more into how you're actually solving this problem. What have you learned about that problem with that first batch of money that then allows you to be the best at tackling this?
Better positioned to solve it.
Exactly. Why are you uniquely positioned to tackle this space? What have you learned that other people may not have learned so easily that makes you there? What connections do you have that makes you able to start, building that revenue base, that starts building out that product? What product have you built and what exact problem does it solve? They don't necessarily need you to have started to scale at that stage, but really have you proven out that there is some sort of need that you're able to address?
Where were you going to source these investors? In America?
Yeah, so our investors have been very international. So in the US and in the UK, where we have background, in the Middle East and in Asia, like we've had investors from all of the world. The pool of African investors is still small, and we've struggled to we have brought in some people who have interest and relevance here on the continent and are based here, but the number of investors that are actually African here is actually very difficult, and I think it's because of the risk-taking nature of the continent. I think because people want to see a lot more evidence, they want to see that you've already got revenue, you want to see that you've got X number of customers, that you've got whatever, and so they're unwilling to take those early bets.
Right. And
we're hoping to bring them more in the future rounds, but I think it's a different risk profile than a lot of other startups here who, the market is sometimes can be smaller because if you're based here, not everyone has a huge amount of purchasing power, and so they want to see a lot more evidence of traction before they're willing to invest in you. Whereas because we've been looking at customers in Europe and the US, they kind of know that it's riskier, but in the sense that if you make it, actually you'll be really successful, but if you don't, then it can be quite difficult. And so there are people who have that risk profile, and so you need to make sure when you're looking for an investor that they match your needs and they really understand what kind of risk that you want to take. And what risk we wanted to take was we wanted to go deep into product development, we wanted to go deep into the team and building out that team. We wanted to tackle the largest customers in the world who can be slow to say yes sometimes, right? And our investors were open to that and they saw that opportunity.
So it's understanding the stage of your business and what it takes to make the business grow from where it is to where it could be.
100%.
So your investor has to be aligned with you.
Has to be aligned with you, and a huge part of it is they have to trust you as a person.
I was
as a
going to get to that. I was
person.
hoping we'd get to that.
Yeah.
That they need, it's more investing in you and being convinced about you as the
person.
entrepreneur.
And I've been very lucky, right? Like 3 of my ex managers in previous jobs and things that I have actually invested back into the company, right?
Beautiful.
And that's a sign that, you know, wherever you go, whatever you do in your life, you're creating connections, you're meeting people, and if you can continue to get them to understand you, understand your vision, understand that trust, then they will invest back into you because they know that you can, they know that you can.
So what I'm picking from Arun is that you can go for a second round of financing. We often want to just get all the money we can get in the first go, but for a tech company, you can go for a second round of financing. I mean, obviously for other kinds of companies as well, but these ones in particular where there's a lot of experimentation, but obviously investors would love to know what it is we used the first round of financing for, what was lent, and whether the need that you had identified is being met, you know, by which part of the solution that you've produced is the need being met. So it's just the idea of keeping records from day one so you can be able to be held accountable for what the first round of financing was used for, and you can be trusted with the second or even third round of financing. So this is just a point I was picking and trying to summarize what I'm getting from here. Obviously, you're probably getting other points as well. We're talking about you getting some of your investment from like people who were your former managers and how that investors actually invest in you, and so important who this entrepreneur is and they can trust and believe in your dream. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think as an individual, like the greatest asset, the thing that you can always invest most in is yourself.
Right.
And when you're investing in yourself, you're showing people around you constantly who you are, what you care about, how you work, what you engage in. And when you're doing that, those are people who in the future could be the investors in you, whether that's your manager, whether that's your friends, whether that's family members, whether that's people who you interact with, colleagues, anyone, fellow students you're around. Those are people who can invest in you one way or another, whether that's money, whether that's time. A lot of the time that your very first team members, employees for a startup, for what you're building, are your friends, and they have to believe in you and what you're trying to create, whether that's advice, whether that's them introducing you to networks to get access to funding in the future. People who I've known in the past have said, hey, you should talk to this person because they're an investor and they're looking for someone like you.
Right.
So you're always investing in that, and that's what networking is. It's not more than that. It's not sharing your business card and doing this. It's really about deeply sharing with who you are and caring about other people around you and knowing that they could be the future to unlocking a lot in the future for you. And
I think the other thing that we look down on a lot as entrepreneurs, especially if you identify as an entrepreneur from an early age, is working. Many people feel, no, I'm not going to get like traditional employment. Do you think it helped for you to have worked before you ventured into this, and does it even matter to your investors?
I think it really, really, really matters. I think the investors cared a lot. So my 2 co-founders, one of them, he was at Palantir for a number of years, and so that's how built that relationship that meant that we got access to that technology, and so they invested in him. The other co-founder, he was deputy CEO at the Eurasia Group, his political risk consulting firm, and he had built a huge network through that, and that's what's given us our initial customer access. That's what given us our initial investor access. So you're constantly like building, and by working, you're being part of an organization. You're understanding the challenges of organizations, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs naturally lean towards B2C businesses where they're looking for consumers and the challenges they're facing. But you're also looking for B2B businesses, and you can only really do that by working inside a business and understanding the challenges that those businesses face. And so there's a lot of learning you get from working in the company, from understanding how business really works, understanding different challenges that are being faced, building a network of people who have money, and also developing security and stability in yourself. It's really, people talk about, I dropped out of university and then I, went off to...
Especially you tech people. You
exactly.
do that a lot. You make our students feel like they shouldn't finish school because if you finish school, you're not a great entrepreneur.
But really, they never talk about these stories in the media, but really the vast majority of successful entrepreneurs have had lots of work experience and have built up connections and have gotten
That
investment.
gives me a bit of comfort,
You know,
because I try to say that to our young people, that all of you tech people have said,
and it's,
drop out of school, you don't need to work for anybody else, but there's so much wealth of experience and networks, like you're saying, and foundation that comes from working for somebody else before you.
And the reality is the biggest thing you get from dropping out and doing that is actually the experience of failure, because the very first thing that you do when you drop out or when you start an early business and early on in your career is that you're very likely to fail. And that failure teaches you things. And then the next failure teaches you things. But you can also get a lot of those same learnings from working, from being in a work environment, if you know what to learn and if you know how to learn it, and you open your mind to seeing the challenges that these companies face. Like me, I was very lucky. Like I did businesses when I was in university. I tried to set up, technology startups. I tried to do this, and they failed, right? But they were really interesting. I learned a lot about how to work with people, about how to make connections, how to do that. And then I went and worked at an African Leadership University teaching and getting access to a network of talent. I worked in the financial markets in London, where I learned a lot about money and how things move and how big businesses work. And so all of these were different learning environments that's put me in a great position today to succeed at what I'm doing.
Right.
But if I hadn't been open to all those different learnings, I think I would still be very early naive and still have to go through a lot. And
you wouldn't have given your investors any form of confidence.
Exactly. And so when we talk to those investors, we say, okay, I've done this before, I've failed at this before, I've tried this, I've got this experience at this company before, and they're all like, wow, these are a solid set of experiences.
I like that. So it's good to also share what you failed at, because it makes you well-rounded.
I think it's great. It's like I've done entrepreneurship before. I've tried this before. I've built teams before. All of this, and people were like, okay, this isn't your first rodeo. You know what the challenges are.
Beautiful.
So
usually entrepreneurs don't like to put what they've failed on, even on their CV. It's like usually I have to help people bring it up and say, you started this business, you ran it for 4 years, it went bust, but you've learned so much. Let's have that on the CV or your profile, as it were. Usually even when people come for job interviews, if they had been working and they went to start their own startup and it didn't work, and they come back looking for a job, they want to skip this part. And it's always important to remind them, you learned so much. You organized teams, you raised finances, you found clients, all of that.
And investors want to hear that, because again, they're investing in you in the first instance, right? And they want to hear, what did you learn from that? Like, are you going to make those same mistakes, right? And if you can pinpoint why it didn't work, if you can pinpoint what was missing, then they're like, okay, this is a much better investment. It's much less risky than someone who's doing this completely fresh and trying things for the first time, because they're going to make those mistakes. But if you've done it before, you may not make those same mistakes again.
Right. So still on the money talk, I know you're still at this very fragile state where you're building, you're still growing, but you do want to talk about revenues. And so how do you decide on pricing, what to charge your clients? And on the one side, you're thinking we're still growing, we're still starting this bigger, value that we can create for the client. We're not yet
at
there,
the right stage,
but you want to charge,
Of course,
right.
And I think early on, a lot of it is about, there's a big difference between no money and some money,
right.
and there's also a big difference between zero customers and one customer and some multiple customers. So at the early stage, you're just trying to find evidence of what we call product market fit, right? That there is a market, that there are people who are willing to pay for this. You're probably not going to get the right price early on, because it's very hard to understand the market and to have done all of the research to understand pricing power and all of this, right? But what you're trying to do is prove value. So what our strategy often has been is to say, this is the price we would like to be at, and we're going to be honest with our clients that this is where we think this contract is, but we're going to give you a heavy discount as well to reflect the fact that you're an early customer, that you're testing out, you're innovating with us. And so we're going to give you a price that you're happy with, but an acknowledgement that this is the real price. And that proves to investors, okay, this is how much it could be, this is the type of pricing, because investors want to see that you can charge a lot, that you can make a lot of money from it, but early customers may not be willing to pay because you're still early and you're figuring things out, and so you need to reflect that. I think for us it's been a journey to like understand, and it depends on the size of the customers we're talking about, because there's increasing complexity the larger a customer is, and so we're still learning and trying to figure this out. We think if we're focusing just on legal, that's one price. If we start to do other areas, that's going to be a new price. We're developing the product, and I think early on it's really about piloting, it's about testing, it's about prototyping,
about proving the concept.
Exactly. And so you just want evidence. You want someone to say, I will pay for this. This is worth some value to me. And then if you don't need to worry too much about the unit economics to figure out like, oh, is it going to be profitable or not? Because hopefully it becomes so valuable of a product that even if you were to increase the price to be something that's better, more reflective of the real costs, they won't move away from it because it's so sticky to their needs. It's like, I can't live without this product. And I think that's been our approach, is that we're not worried at this stage about getting lots and lots and lots of revenue. We're just about proving that users love our product, that users really, really, really want to use it.
So how do you find your clients? Like, do you do marketing? Do you think it's been important for you to do marketing, and are you investing a lot in your branding as well? Like, talk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, we've done branding, we've done some work around that. With websites and creating the right templates and designs and doing a lot of that, and we have done, and it's important to do the baseline level of it, because people will come, they'll see who you are, they want to know that you are credible, that you've worked on interesting things, all of that sort of stuff. But really, our biggest value add has been through outreach, through networks, through because we're talking to executives, we're talking to general counsels, chief legal officers, head of legal operations, these kind of roles, and they're not sitting there on looking at ads on LinkedIn or something like that. Realistically, they are looking for someone else to refer them to the product, right? And so what we'll do is we'll see who at our network knows someone who is the general counsel or knows someone within the legal team at a specific company, and then say, hey, can you make an intro for us to that person? Because getting that intro means that they're much more likely to take that call, to take that demo, than if they see a random ad on a website or something like that. And so and there's other things we do. So we're at conferences, and at conferences people are looking for new products to test out and see if it's the right thing. We write articles, so we should do like thought leadership, where we share our perspectives on the space and what people should be thinking about. We'll try and do more. We'll do other things as well, but generally our biggest kind of approach has been through networks, getting introductions, having people be introduced to us, so that we can have those opportunities to show them the product.
Please pardon me for asking you very elementary questions on this one. When you say you go to conferences, how do you find your way into a conference?
Yeah, so there's different types of conferences out there. Some of them you do have to pay, especially as a vendor, to be as a sponsored vendor, to say, okay, I want to have a speaking slot at this conference. So some of them you will have to pay. Some of them you will get invites, or people will have heard about you through the articles that you're writing and say, hey, please come along to this conference. And so it really kind of depends. Sometimes our customers will say that. They'll say, oh, there's this operations conference that's happening that I'm going to. You guys should actually be there. I'm happy to talk a little bit about you guys at this conference.
I think it's in the same vein when it comes to trying to access international investors. How do you go about that?
It's the same thing, I think a lot of the times it's putting yourself out there. It's going through your LinkedIn connections and seeing who's connected to who, asking people for favors. You have to ask in this industry, in entrepreneurship, you have to ask people for help. You cannot do it yourself, and you have to be like, hey, we're looking for investment. Do you know anyone who might be interested?
So we cannot be egotistic about this.
We absolutely cannot.
You speak about asking, about learning, about putting yourself out. That requires a little bit of egolessness. Just thinking about the bigger picture.
No, and I think that's the easy thing to fall into a trap of as entrepreneurs. I'm creating, I'm building, I have a vision, I'm doing this, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you humble yourself and you say, hey, what do you think about this vision? Well, how would you change it? Or what do you think we can do to raise money? What do you think we can do to get more customers? And people are willing to help. People are open to helping through their advice, through their networks, through whatever, because they want to see you succeed, especially if you're coming to them and asking them. And then because they know in the future, at some point, they'll need to ask for something.
Right.
And then you'll be able to provide. So, ask for the help, but also give help freely, right? Like, when other entrepreneurs come and ask you for thoughts and advice because you've had a little bit more experience, be open in sharing that, share those networks. And that's the thing with investors, that one of the secrets some of the investors have told us before is that they look for references mostly from other founders. So if another founder refers them to another company, they're much more likely to take it seriously than anyone else, because founders know each other well. They understand the challenges that they face. They know who's good and who's not. Right. And so they really, really are open to that. So ask your other entrepreneurial friends how they've raised money, and ask for those introductions. Hey, can you introduce me to the people that you raise money to? And most of the time they will, because they get benefit from showing that investor that it's more companies, and then that investor might invest more in them in the future. So it's about humbling yourself, sharing, and learning from each other, I think.
So I assume that because you have, perhaps on the topic about marketing, it's a B2B setup. So B2B, usually you can't just go on social media and throw random adverts there. So thank you for walking us through how you go about yours. Do you have people in your team who keep books for you and do the accounting work, and so you have proper records?
Yeah, exactly. So we have an accounting firm. We got them. As soon as we got the investment in, like, that was one of the first things that we did. We made sure we had all of our books in order. I think it's very important early for entrepreneurs to make sure that they have the legals in place, the accounting in place, because really, like, investors also need to make sure that everything is above the table, it's clear, it's very understandable what you're doing. And if you don't make sure that's in a good place, then it's hard to gain that trust. It's hard to make sure that you're there. And it's very easy to overlook, because as you said, you're focusing on product, you're focusing on customers, you're focusing on building it out, but you need it to be at a good place. So and the nice thing is that actually early on, a lot of you might have a friend who's an accountant or who's a lawyer or something, and they're usually willing to help you do the initial work for you. And then once you've done the initial work, it makes things much easier. And then once you're at a stage, maybe you've got some funding, you've got something raised, then you want to make sure you've invested a little bit into something like an accounting firm or a law firm who can do that basic work for you, because it's really important.
And as Arun is emphasizing, get your books in order just from the first round of financing. Have proper records that you can use, demonstrate with evidence. This is what the first round of financing was used for, and any other round of financing really as best practice. So these are some of the points I'm picking up as we go. Do you go on your own platform to look for the right lawyer?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually something that we've been trying to build out a little bit ourselves, as hence for smaller businesses, for startups, for this, to think of, because it's a similar kind of challenge. And it's funny because with these large companies, big corporates, they don't want to share their data. They don't want to tell you share with each other who's good and who's not. Right. But with entrepreneurs, actually, we're much more willing to share with each other. I'll tell you who I've worked with, who's been good and who's bad. And so we're thinking maybe there's a community version of this product that you can share amongst founders, amongst entrepreneurs in a particular space, so we can also learn from each other. Yeah.
Right. So the last part one, I guess, question. You I assume your co-founders, you have different skill sets.
Definitely,
and you're not even based in the same country. Now your co-founders are in other parts of the world at the moment. How do you organize and get things done with your team? Like, what's important to systemize, and regardless of where you are, you manage to take a week off, which is something entrepreneurs don't get. How do you guys organize yourselves, systemize internally?
Yeah, so it's been a really great journey with the three of us. We, as you said, we bring in different skill sets. The business and the sales side, the customer side, the technology side, the product development side. We all kind of come together, and we talk through a lot together. So we meet regularly. We'll share our ideas. We'll share what we think is our vision. But we also trust each other.
Right.
We trust each other to make the decisions that need to be made. So we won't say every decision needs to get approval or this or whatever. We trust each other. Okay, that area, just make the decision. And that reflects itself onto the team as well, because we trust the team to make the decisions.
Right.
They don't need to necessarily come to us for everything and say this. They can make decisions. They can go ahead and build this feature. They can go ahead and decide that this should be a certain way. They can go ahead and reach out to this customer. So it's a lot of building trust trust. And I think because we started off remote, we had to learn very quickly how to work remotely. So initially, Steve, my other co-founder, he was based here in Rwanda, but we couldn't see each other for months because of COVID.
And
but
so business had to carry on.
Business had to carry on. And so initially, we were built on this online environment, and we figured things out. You know, we knew we had to connect, we had to share ideas. We did things asynchronously, so we worked on documents where one person would do things and do some edits and share. But yeah, it's been a lot of trust. It's been, you know, regular catch-ups, time spent socially, and I think our culture also values that social time. Both Sean and Steve have kids, and you know their kids will be on the call sometimes, right? Because you know it happens, like they'll be jumping up and down and doing things, and that's created an environment where we value the time that we have with our families, with our friends, and that we can, you know, if I'm offline for a week, they'll take care of everything and make sure things get done. They don't necessarily need me. Same with one of them being offline, etc. It's really that trust, that openness, that willingness to share with each other, and that feeling that, okay, like we'll get through this together.
Arun, what's been most challenging? What do you find very challenging about running Hands Technologies?
It's a good question. I'd say the biggest challenge has been my own learnings and self-development. I think like I've had to constantly push myself to new areas, to new things that I have never done before, and reflect on them. So product development has been a big thing that I've never really... I've worked on products before, I've tried this, but I've never done it in this level of depth, and I've had to constantly push myself. I've had to learn about, you know, managing team and realizing, and it's just this constant, you know, talking about it earlier, like the firefighting, just people, just new things coming in and being like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to learn how it works. Like investment, I had never really raised funding before. And to go out and ask people, you know, humble yourself, say, we need money. Like, would you be willing to? And almost know that they're putting their trust in you, right? Like they know that, oh, their money is now in your hands, and you have that
level of accountability.
Exactly, that accountability. And the same with the team, right? Like there's people's lives at stake, right? Like their employment, their future, their families, etc. And so there's a lot of responsibility, but then knowing that you have that shared responsibility with the founders, with the rest of the team, that you're learning just like everyone else is. And I think constantly feeling those new things, those different things, and never really feeling comfortable, because I think that's what entrepreneurship is. So you're
constantly stretching.
Constantly stretching, and I think that's been a big thing for me. And I think now I just took last week off was a big thing, and I hadn't taken it in a while. Like I hadn't taken time off for like for a week in more than a year, and I was like, I really needed it, because I have been constantly stretched and pushed and pulled in different directions, and knowing that you need that time off. You need to look after yourself, your mental health, your care for yourself, so that you can come back and then now start pushing again, because it is an endless push. It is an endless striving for the next milestone, the next investment, the next customer.
What mindset do you think young people in Africa need to have to take on this type of challenge? Entrepreneurial.
It's a good question. I think there are a few different things. I think absolutely one is persistence. Persistence, because it does not come easy. It doesn't fall in like, you know, the movies always, and then they thought of this idea and suddenly they had millions of dollars. No. It's persistence. Everything. Building the product is persistence. Getting customers is persistence. Getting investment is persistence, right? Like everything is just persistence. But at the same time, that persistence with like adaptation and willingness to listen and understand what's not working, what is working, and make slight tweaks to things. It's almost a big like experiment that you're doing, a scientific experiment where you make a small change and you see what happens. Okay, is this the right thing? Okay, we made our team work a little differently. Is this good or is this not? We changed this bit of the product. We changed this way we do marketing. Is this working or is it not? So you're persisting in the high level, but you're also experimenting and tweaking with a lot of little things. You know, and you should be willing to do that. Don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to shift the vision, to shift the product. If you're finding traction here, then go with that traction, you know. So it's that mix of persistence and adaptation that I think is really powerful for young people. Yeah.
So now we have a lot of young people. I know we talk about this young talent in Africa. Some are educated, some are tech techies like you, and they're sitting at home unemployed. What would you say to such a young person about going into entrepreneurship and betting on yourself, just to encourage them?
Sure, yeah. I would say definitely entrepreneurship is amazing. It's an awesome journey. It's very, very, very tough. Mm-hmm. Make sure you have the right support system to be able to do it. Look around you, look everywhere for friends, for teammates, for mentors, for potential investors, do all of that, and really trust yourself, because it's hard, but if you don't believe in yourself, then it can get very, 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 very difficult. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Learn. There's lots of opportunities out there. There's lots of people out there who are willing to help. There's lots of interesting problems to solve. The best thing that this continent has is that there's lots of exciting problems to solve. And in a lot of other parts of the world, people are solving really lame, boring problems that no one should really care that much about. But here there are real problems. Mm-hmm. So really focus in on one that you personally get excited about, and go deep into it, I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Arun. I think this has been very informative.
Great.
I had to stay present for my students.
This was awesome.
But at the same time, I'm learning, I'm getting lost. We have obviously learned so much from Arun, but we cannot part ways without challenging each other. We learn by doing, and that's the only way we can learn in entrepreneurship. So please let me challenge you to take a few actions as we close. The first one, let us go and find out about other tech companies which are set up in Africa but are servicing markets which are outside of Africa. It'll be interesting to see what we find. Or a tech company that is set up in one part of Africa but is servicing the rest of Africa. Let's just see what's happening in our digital economy. You'll be surprised that maybe it will trigger an interest in you to set up a company that is taking advantage of the growing digital economy. The second one is, if you've failed at a business before, take time to write down what it is you've learned. I know it can be a painful process, but it's good reflection. It can help. Just write down what it is you've learned. And if you're working somewhere, what are you learning every day that you think you could use ultimately when you start your own business, or that you could use in your side business if you're already running a side business? Just reflective thoughts in that working environment. What are you learning? Some could be what to do and some could be what not to do. And if you're a student, what are you learning in school from your failures, from your wins, from interactions with different stakeholders? What are you picking? The skills that you think you can use ultimately in your own business. Write those down, reflect, discuss with somebody else. Let this learning simmer. Thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Now, let's go and do.